My name is Thomas McAllister. I'm 78 years old, a retired Army veteran who served 2 tours in Vietnam and spent 30 years working construction in Detroit after coming home. For decades, I dedicated my life to serving my country, then to building a home and a future for my family. Just days before July 4th, when the entire nation was preparing to celebrate freedom, family unity, and American values, I found myself facing the most devastating betrayal of my life. I had raised my son David as a single father after my wife Sarah passed from cancer when he was just 12. I worked double shifts, saved every penny I could, and put him through Michigan State University. I bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Warren, Michigan, paid off the mortgage early, and built a comfortable nest egg of about $400,000 through careful investing and my VA benefits. I thought I had done everything right as a father. David grew up to become a real estate agent in Birmingham, one of those upscale Detroit suburbs. He married young, had 2 kids, and always seemed to be chasing the next big deal. Over the past few months, I noticed him asking subtle questions about my finances, the deed to my house, and my investment accounts. My intuition, sharpened by years of service where detecting threats was crucial, told me something wasn't right. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. On June 30th, David showed up at my door with a serious expression. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, sitting down at my kitchen table. He explained that he couldn't take care of me anymore, that I needed professional help, and that he had found a spot for me at Sunset Manor, a state-run nursing facility about 20 miles away. "It's just temporary, Dad," he assured me. "I just don't have the structure to care for you right now with everything going on." I knew better. At 78, I still had all my mental faculties. I could drive, cook, manage my own medications, and handle my finances. Sure, I moved a little slower and needed reading glasses, but I was far from needing nursing care. But David was insistent, almost urgent about it. He had already filled out the paperwork and paid the first month. "We'll get you settled, and then we can figure out a better long-term solution," he said. Something in his tone, the way he avoided eye contact, triggered every alarm bell in my head. This wasn't about my health or his convenience. This was about something else entirely. But I kept my reaction controlled, just nodded and said, "If that's what you think is best, son." Within 2 days, I was packed up and moved into a sterile room at Sunset Manor. David left me there on July 2nd with a quick hug and a promise to visit soon. As I watched his BMW pull out of the parking lot, I understood what was really happening. David wanted to liquidate my house, access my bank accounts, and secure his inheritance while the old man was isolated and out of the picture. But what David had seriously underestimated was the resilient spirit of a man who had spent his entire life serving and building with discipline. Even with my physical limitations in that nursing home, I wasn't about to let my son's greed destroy everything I had worked for. My mind was sharp, and more importantly, I had something David had forgotten about, a network of loyal contacts built over decades of honest dealing. The first person I called was Maria Rodriguez, a nurse at Sunset Manor who had immediately stood out to me. She was different from the others, professional, compassionate, and genuinely cared about the residents. During our conversations, I learned she was a Navy veteran herself, having served as a hospital corpsman for 8 years. That connection meant everything. When I explained my situation, she didn't hesitate to help. "Mr. McAllister," she said quietly during her evening rounds, "what do you need me to do?" I had her make a call to Charles Bennett, my attorney for the past 15 years. Chuck had handled my will, my house purchase, and knew every detail of my financial situation. He was also a Vietnam veteran. We had served in different units but shared that bond that never breaks. When Maria handed me the phone, Chuck's voice was immediately concerned. "Tommy, what the hell is going on? Your son called my office yesterday asking about power of attorney documents and claiming you were incapacitated." That confirmed everything I suspected. David was moving fast, trying to establish legal control over my assets while I was supposedly unable to make decisions for myself. But he had made a critical mistake. He didn't know about all my accounts. You see, after Sarah died, I had diversified everything on Chuck's advice. My savings were spread across 3 different banks, Comerica, Chase, and a credit union. I had a separate investment account with Edward Jones that David knew nothing about, containing about $150,000 in blue-chip stocks and bonds. The house deed was held in a living trust that required my personal signature and a notarized witness, something David couldn't forge even if he tried. "Chuck," I said, "I need you to do something for me immediately. Cancel any power of attorney documents David might try to file. Then I want you to put additional protections on all my accounts." Within 24 hours, Chuck had contacted every financial institution I dealt with. He placed fraud alerts on all my accounts, requiring in-person verification with 2 forms of ID for any major transactions. He also filed a protective order with the probate court in Oakland County, documenting that I was mentally competent and had not authorized anyone to act on my behalf. But I wasn't finished. I had Maria help me contact Jim Morrison, my old construction foreman who now ran his own contracting business. Jim owed me favors from the old days when I had vouched for him to get his contractor's license. I asked him to drive by my house and keep an eye on things. What Jim discovered made my blood run cold. On July 3rd, he saw David at my house with a real estate agent, walking through the property and taking measurements. There was also a locksmith there, changing the locks. David was moving to take possession of my home while I was locked away in that nursing facility. That evening, I had Maria make another call, this time to my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had lived next door for 12 years. She confirmed what Jim had seen and added more disturbing details. David had told her I was never coming back, and that the house would be going on the market within the week. He had even started throwing away my personal belongings, including Sarah's jewelry and my military medals. The rage I felt was unlike anything I had experienced since coming home from Vietnam, but I channeled that anger into cold, calculated action. I instructed Chuck to file an emergency injunction to prevent any sale of my property. I also had him prepare documents transferring 75% of my assets into an irrevocable trust benefiting homeless veterans, something David could never touch, no matter what happened to me. By the evening of July 3rd, all the pieces were in place. Every financial door David thought he could walk through was now locked tight. Every legal avenue he planned to exploit was blocked. His carefully orchestrated scheme was about to collapse around him, and he had no idea what was coming. The beauty of it was that I hadn't confronted him directly, hadn't made any accusations, hadn't even let him know I was aware of his plan. I had simply used the legal system and my network of trustworthy people to protect what was rightfully mine. Tomorrow was Independence Day, and David was about to learn a harsh lesson about what freedom really means. On July 4th, Independence Day, David's world began to crumble. I later learned from Chuck exactly how it unfolded. David had arrived at Comerica Bank that morning, confident and dressed in his best suit, carrying what he claimed were power of attorney documents. He planned to withdraw $50,000 as a test run before going after the bigger amounts. The bank manager, Janet Williams, reviewed his paperwork with a poker face. Then she excused herself and returned with a security guard. "Mr. McAllister," she said calmly, "I'm going to need you to leave the premises immediately. These documents are invalid, and attempting to access another person's accounts under false pretenses is considered fraud." David's face went white. He stammered something about a mistake, about his father being incapacitated, but Janet was firm. "Sir, we spoke with Mr. Thomas McAllister personally yesterday. He is mentally competent and has explicitly stated that no one has permission to access his accounts. If you attempt this again, we will contact the police." From there, David raced to Chase Bank, then to the credit union. Same story everywhere. Every door slammed shut in his face. The investment account at Edward Jones? The representative there told him they had never heard of any David McAllister and had strict instructions to contact law enforcement if anyone claiming to be family tried to access the account. But the real shock came when David drove to my house around noon. He pulled up to find Chuck Bennett standing in my driveway with a Wayne County Sheriff's deputy and a locksmith of our own. Chuck was holding a court order and wearing the kind of smile that comes from decades of practicing law. "David," Chuck said, nodding politely. "Interesting morning you've had." David tried to bluff his way through it. "Chuck, thank God you're here. There's been some kind of mistake with Dad's accounts. I'm just trying to help him, and the banks are being difficult." The deputy stepped forward. "Sir, I need to inform you that you are currently trespassing on property that doesn't belong to you. We have a court order here preventing any sale or transfer of this residence. You need to return the keys you had made and remove yourself from the premises immediately." That's when David realized how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. His confident facade cracked. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising. "He's my father. He's in a nursing home. He can't take care of himself." Chuck pulled out his phone and showed David a video call. There I was, sitting in my room at Sunset Manor, looking directly into the camera. "Hello, David," I said calmly. "I hope you're having a meaningful Independence Day." The color drained from David's face. He understood in that moment that I knew everything. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal. The old man he thought he could easily manipulate had been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. "Dad, I can explain," David stammered into the phone. "No need," I replied. "Actions speak louder than words. Always have." Chuck ended the call and handed David a manila envelope. "These are the new terms," he said. "Your father's assets are now protected by an irrevocable trust. The house remains in his name with additional legal protections. You have no access to any of his accounts, and any future attempts to gain unauthorized access will result in criminal charges." David opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was documentation showing that 75% of my estate now belonged to the McAllister Veterans Foundation, a trust that would provide housing assistance to homeless veterans in Michigan. The remaining 25% was designated for my care, with any surplus going to the same foundation upon my death. "This is impossible," David whispered. "He's incompetent. He's in a nursing home." The sheriff's deputy smiled. "Sir, your father checked himself out of that facility this morning. He's currently residing in a senior living community in Royal Oak that he selected himself. He's also requested that you have no contact with him unless specifically invited." That afternoon, I was indeed in my new apartment at Autumn Woods, a beautiful senior community where I had my own kitchen, living room, and the independence I had earned. I wasn't hiding from David. I simply had nothing left to say to him. The truth was, I felt no joy in his humiliation. There was no satisfaction in watching my own son discover that his greed had cost him everything. But there was peace in knowing that I had protected not just my own dignity, but also ensured that my life's work would continue helping others long after I was gone. That evening, as fireworks lit up the sky over Detroit, I sat on my small balcony thinking about what freedom really means. It's not just about independence from oppression. It's about having the wisdom to know when someone you love has become the oppressor. In the weeks following Independence Day, the full scope of David's betrayal became clear. Chuck Bennett helped me piece together the timeline of my son's deception. It turned out David had been planning this for months, not just weeks. He had accumulated significant debt trying to maintain his lifestyle in Birmingham, and his real estate business was failing. He owed nearly $80,000 on credit cards and had taken out a second mortgage on his own house that he couldn't afford. His original plan was simple but cruel: get me declared incompetent, gain power of attorney, liquidate my assets, and use the money to save his own financial situation. He figured an old veteran wouldn't have the resources or knowledge to fight back. He was counting on me being isolated, confused, and dependent on his version of events. But David had forgotten who raised him. He had forgotten the values I tried to instill in him about honor, integrity, and looking out for those who can't look out for themselves. Most importantly, he had underestimated the network of relationships I had built over 7 decades of treating people with respect and honesty. The McAllister Veterans Foundation became operational within 60 days. Chuck had worked with a nonprofit attorney to establish it properly, and we partnered with existing organizations in Detroit and Grand Rapids to maximize our impact. The foundation's mission was simple: provide temporary housing assistance and job placement services for homeless veterans who had been abandoned by their families. Our first resident was Marcus Johnson, a 42-year-old Marine veteran who had been living under the Ambassador Bridge for 8 months after his brother kicked him out for struggling with PTSD. Within 6 weeks, Marcus had his own apartment in Hamtramck and a job at Ford's Dearborn plant. Seeing him get back on his feet reminded me why I had made the decision to redirect my inheritance. I settled into life at Autumn Woods and found genuine contentment there. My apartment was comfortable, the staff was respectful, and I had made friends with other residents who appreciated good conversation and the occasional poker game. I volunteered twice a week at the VA hospital in Detroit, helping younger veterans navigate the bureaucracy that I had mastered over the years. 3 months after Independence Day, David attempted to contact me. He called the front desk at Autumn Woods and asked to speak with me. The receptionist, following my instructions, told him that I was not accepting calls from family members without prior written request. A week later, he sent a letter. The letter was everything I expected it to be: part apology, part justification, part plea for financial help. He wrote about his mistakes, claimed he had only wanted to help me, and mentioned that he was facing foreclosure on his house. He asked if we could work something out and promised to make things right between us. I read the letter twice, then filed it away without responding. There was nothing to work out. David had shown me exactly who he was when he thought I was vulnerable and defenseless. That knowledge couldn't be undone with words on paper. Chuck handled one more legal matter for me that fall. David had apparently consulted with several attorneys about challenging my mental competency and the establishment of the foundation. Every lawyer he spoke with told him the same thing. The documentation was airtight. I had clearly been competent when making these decisions, and any challenge would likely result in him paying my legal fees when he lost. The final blow to David's hopes came when his house actually went into foreclosure in November. His wife Jennifer filed for divorce, citing financial irresponsibility and dishonesty. She had apparently discovered his plan to manipulate me only after it failed, and she wanted no part of a man who would abandon his own father for money. I felt no satisfaction in learning about David's downfall. If anything, it saddened me to see how completely greed had corrupted the boy I had raised. But I also recognized that some lessons can only be learned through consequences, and David was finally facing the results of his choices. By Christmas of that year, the foundation had helped 12 veterans find stable housing and employment. We had partnered with 3 local businesses that specifically hired veterans, and our success rate was remarkable. These men and women weren't looking for handouts. They just needed someone to give them a chance and believe in their potential. I spent Christmas Day at the foundation's headquarters, which we had established in a renovated building in southwest Detroit. We hosted a dinner for veterans who had nowhere else to go, and I found myself surrounded by the kind of family that isn't determined by blood, but by shared values and mutual respect. As I looked around that room, watching men and women who had served their country enjoying a meal in each other's company, I realized that David's betrayal had led me to something far more meaningful than just protecting my money. It had shown me how to turn my life's work into a lasting legacy that would continue helping people long after I was gone. 6 months later, David made one final attempt to reconcile. He showed up unannounced at Autumn Woods on Memorial Day weekend. The front desk called my apartment, and I agreed to see him in the lobby for 15 minutes. He looked older, worn down by the consequences of his choices. His expensive clothes had been replaced by a simple polo shirt and khakis. When he sat down across from me, I could see desperation in his eyes. "Dad," he said, "I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but I'm still your son, and I need help." I looked at him for a long moment before responding. "David, you stopped being my son the moment you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive. You're Jennifer's ex-husband now, and your children's father, and that's enough responsibility for any man." "But what about forgiveness?" he asked. What about family? Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, I replied. And family means looking out for each other, not preying on each other when someone becomes vulnerable. I stood up from my chair and looked down at him one last time. Independence Day taught me something important, son. Sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is declare your independence from people who don't share your values, even when they share your blood. Today, 3 years later, the foundation has helped over 50 veterans rebuild their lives. I'm 81 now, still sharp, still active, and still committed to making sure no veteran faces homelessness because their family abandoned them. My story became a reminder that true freedom begins with justice, and sometimes justice means having the courage to protect yourself from the people who should have protected you. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get updates on new stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.